This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. And welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard, and it's a real privilege to be with you today. As always, we have another great show in store for you today. Today, we're going to be kicking off the first part of a two-part series centered around storytelling. But we're going to talk about these things in a lot of different ways that I think over the next two episodes, you're going to get a lot of value from an individual level, an executive level, and even a business level that's going to, I think, make a real powerful difference for you. So today, we're going to be talking about how to help you preserve your unique story and how to differentiate yourself from everybody else out there. We're all blessed with unique God-given talents and abilities, but yet we always try to keep up with everybody else and go with the Joneses and try to blend in. And that's really not beneficial to you. If you really want to go far in life, you've got to be different. You've got to be unique. And today we have an awesome guest that's an expert in the storytelling arena that's going to guide us through that and give us some really good tips to help us differentiate and be okay, be confident in being unique. And so today I have the privilege of introducing Andrew Hall, all the way from Vancouver, Canada. Let me tell you a little bit about Andrew. Andrew is the co-founder of a group called No Story Lost, which is a company that uniquely captures people's stories and writes those stories, brings those stories to life, and helps them publish that in a book or some kind of format that will enable them to never, ever be forgotten and to help them be different and unique and stand out and preserve who they are and what they're doing to give back to the world for many years to come. So without further ado, Andrew, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great introduction. And right off the top, I love what you said about being unique, being different, being differentiated. And it made me think of wisdom from somebody, which was around just know that there's nobody in the world who can be better at being you than you. So if you're authentic and you're being yourself, you're the best possible person in the world to do that, which I love that thought.
Absolutely. They say, the experts out there say, that we're exposed to between like 5,000 and 10,000 impressions of something
Hmm.
every single day. So whether we're scrolling through the phone and we're looking at all the kinds of social media stuff and ads on the social media, or we're looking up stuff on the internet and exposed to all the stuff there, whether we're driving down the road and there's flashy stuff on our high-tech touch screens in our vehicles that's advertising and marketing and various things there. It could be billboards on the side of the road. It could be anything, anywhere. It seems like you can't go to a sporting event or go anywhere in the world. Even restaurants have those computer screens there where you can order, you can pay, and all that stuff at a little kiosk on top of it. But there's all these ads on there too. You're exposed to more and more and more stuff every area of life. So if all of us are seeing 5 to 10,000 different things every single day, Andrew, the question to you, my friend, is how in the heck do you break through that and be unique, be different? How do you showcase those talents and preserve those things?
Yeah, it feels like we need like sensory deprivators on sometimes to try to keep any kind of focus. Um, what comes to mind for me is finding time to spend where you have some time away from all that. So I'm not going to be your meditation guru guest. That's not like a huge strength of mine. But one thing that my peers and I have worked really hard on is trying to take some time away every week and every year to do like a personal development retreat and turn everything off for even if it's for 2 days. My friend created a guide, a book, like a journal you can buy for this, and to work through a 2 day retreat to reset yourself on values, goals, bucket lists, reflections, how you're spending your time, all that kind of stuff. So that is one of my number one recommendations in life for people, especially if you're feeling a little bit confused, inundated, overstimulated, is to take that time away and do deep work on what you want out of life, and how you can go get it. And then
Yeah.
obviously once you're done the retreat, then it's about building in habits and patterns to get away, once a day, whether that's your morning meditation or whatever it is, to keep on track with the stuff that you've built during your reflection.
Yeah. Powerful. Reminds me of a guy named Brian Tracy, very world renowned guy, not too far from your neck of the woods. And he talks about solitude. That's a
Hmm.
word you don't really hear about in all of the Forbes magazines and all the articles and things that are published out there. Solitude, the power and the value of solitude and just having some quiet time, some focus time, some reflection time to just kind of
Hmm.
collect your thoughts and process things and really think through things on a deeper level because everybody seems to be so darn busy today. We seem to just kind of be hitting the wave tops with things, just trying to get our bases covered. And the power of reflection and solitude, as you were describing, can make a huge difference. So tell us a bit about you. How in the world did you get started in storytelling? Catch us up on how you got to where you are today. This is an interesting background you have.
Yeah, I'll do a quick version of the early part of my life and then a little more detail on how I got into storytelling. So I grew up in Calgary, Alberta, pretty close to the Rocky Mountains, and had a good, happy, healthy childhood there. And then didn't know what I wanted to do for university, didn't know where I wanted to go. So I registered for classes in Calgary as well as on the West Coast in a little city called Victoria. And it came to be like the week before school. I hadn't registered for classes in Calgary. And so I just said, I guess I'm going to Victoria for school. So I packed up my car, drove out there, lived in my grandparents' basement, and ended up doing a business degree. So the kind of juxtaposition there is like definitely living life kind of on a whim at the time. No knowledge yet of personal development, goal setting, or taking that time to think ahead and plan and all that stuff. So for a couple of years, I mean, for my childhood and then for my university years, a lot of just, as my friend Derek says, walking backwards, like shoulder checking once in a while, but not really living really intentionally forward. And a lot of that was just, being that age, not knowing what I wanted to be, that question you get. And so just trying to follow a pattern that hopefully put me right in the right direction. But I loved my commerce classes when I started at university. So I ended up switching majors and going into a BCom degree. Finished with a minor in entrepreneurship, did an exchange semester in Sweden, and then
Hmm.
came out of school and got the dream job for a business student, which is working for one of the big consulting and accounting firms. So got a job with Deloitte as a business analyst
Hmm.
and jumped in there for a couple of years. I'll pause there if you have any questions, but that's kind of how I
All
grew
right.
up and got
So,
it into
so,
into career at least.
so you're out of school. You've figured out a few things. You're in a great global company like Deloitte. That's a great place to start and really expand your horizons and take advantage of some great opportunities. But what like you woke up one day and you're like, I think I'm gonna get into the storytelling thing. Like what happened? What caused you to, kind of redivert your attention towards this and put your
Hmm.
focus into it?
So I woke up one day and another day and another day and a bunch of days, and I watched as to be a part of a company like that, you have to be very committed to, okay, the company decides what I do, where I am, who I am for my time at that company. And that always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It wasn't like rebellious or anything growing up, but I started to learn that I really valued having control over my time and what I did. And also, I just started reading like my very first couple personal development books. I read The 4 Hour Body by Tim Ferriss and 4 Hour Work Week, and kind of got that bug of like, okay, you can really create the future you want. And so my co-founder, who will come back into the story for No Story Lost, he's my cousin. He's my best buddy. We grew up together in Calgary. He and I both left. He was at PwC. I was at Deloitte. We both left to start a nonprofit, actually. So a different company before this called Meal Share. So we
Mm.
would put our Meal Share logo next to a few menu items on our restaurant's menu. And if somebody bought a Meal Share item, they'd get their meal just like normal, but we'd provide one meal to a youth in need. So buy one, give one program, kind of like Tom's Shoes, but for food instead. And we ended up running that for like 9 years. And the kind of purpose of that part of the story is learning that for my co-founder and I, it was really important to do something on our own and do something that would be good for the world. So
Hmm.
we never want to start a business or run a business that's, super negative for the world or takes advantage of people or that sort of thing. We want to do things that are good for the world. So that's where we kind of cut our teeth in entrepreneurship, running Mealshare for yeah about 9 years. And as Mealshare was coming to an end, due mostly to COVID, because it
Mm.
became very hard for restaurants for a little while, and that was our only client. That's when we kind of bring in the story of No Story Lost.
Wow. So, no story lost. You and your cousin Jeremy come together, and it, as I was reading about this fabulous story, this centered around your grandfather, didn't it?
You got it. Yeah. So we grew up together, like I said, and we'd always have these family dinners, family events centered around that side of the family, including my grandpa, who you mentioned, and his four kids and all their kids. And so we had this 15-person army that would meet up for every family holiday dinner. And he was often the center of attention. He had the most amazing stories. He'd be singing songs to us, reading poetry, and just generally causing a ruckus and causing laughter. And so for as long as we could remember as kids, people would always say like, "Hey, we got to write down some of his stories, like record his songs while we still can." He had had a heart attack in the 70s and was still with us in 30, 40 years later. Um, and so everyone kept saying this, and we grow up. I leave Calgary, I come back. People are still saying this, and no one's done anything about it. So
Mm.
eventually, I thought, okay, we got to do this. Someone's got to take take the bull by the horns. So I sat down at my laptop and got him talking, and just typed and typed and typed, and so recorded an hour's worth of his stories, feverishly typing while he told stories, and quickly learned like this is going to be really cool, but this is not how to do it and this is not easy. And so the next time we actually recorded him speaking, and then we were able
Mm.
to transcribe that later. Kind of as we went, we learned each of the steps you would need to take a person's verbal story and turn it into a book, but each of those steps had its own little pitfalls and challenges. And so by the time we finished it, we handed out these books to the whole family. Everybody loves them, but it was a ton of work and kind of expensive to put it all together. So that's when kind of our business minds clicked again, and we said, now that we know how to do this and we know what we do differently, we can probably build a platform for people to do this, and just take care of all of it for them. And so that's where the idea was born. And we started doing a few friends and family projects, for people that we knew who might also want to have a story captured. And then the business has evolved from there.
Amazing. What do you think the most important aspects of that process is?
So a talented and experienced interviewer who can take both the really quiet types and pull stories out of them, or they can meet up with somebody who rambles on and on and on, and they can really narrow them into like a good story
Mm.
that covers their entire life. So the interviewing is pretty essential. And then there's some like table stakes things where you're transcribing, you're making sure there's no errors in the writing. Then that same interviewer actually does the writing and organizes everything because they've now got the one-to-one context of working with and speaking with the person. And then, yeah, we have great designers as well who bring the visuals together with the colors, pulling some of the quotes and making them big on certain pages and all that. Yeah, and then the printing as well. But I would say design and interviewing are some of the most important pieces.
That sounds really fascinating. I mean, how to bring all that to life because you're kind of visualizing somebody's life, their day and their
Hmm.
life, their stories, their adventures, their good days, the bad days. Like you're bringing all that together and kind of visualizing that. And so what how'd your grandfather react? Like, when people see the final product, what are some, typical comments that people give you?
Yeah, I mean, one of our favorite ones is a good friend of ours who did a book for her dad, and she had heard lots of the stories before, but she said like when she started flipping through the pages and hearing things she'd never heard before, she said, I broke down crying happy tears. Like that was the best. That was the coolest. So that kind of became a North Star for us. Is like, let's try to make families cry some happy tears.
Hmm.
I think for the storyteller, the best part is usually the interviewing because it's a chance to reminisce and feel important and feel that someone cares and wants to listen. And some of them have really great reactions too and actually seeing the book. But the book arriving is often really special for their partner or their kids who again are learning things they've never heard before, seeing old photos. There's like something amazing at looking at the old black and white photos, and then it evolving into color and more modern times. So yeah, usually, fantastic reactions from people.
Now, I've heard of people doing like scrapbooks and stuff like that before. They'll put pictures
Hmm.
and they'll glue stuff in there and get little things at the craft store and really get creative with. How does storytelling and what you're doing differ from stuff like that?
Hmm. Similarly, people make photo books all the time, and they don't need us to help them make a photo book. There's great tools online for doing that. Scan the photos in, upload them, someone will print them off. So I think it really is the bringing together of the stories in the words of the storyteller and placing them with all those other fun details. So we actually try not to be like a ghost written memoir because I think that can be kind of intimidating to think,
Hmm.
is my life important enough to have somebody turn it into this intense memoir? Some people might feel like not, but I think everybody has at least fun anecdotes and stories that at least their family would love to hear. So what we do is, as you know, we record the interviews and then transcribe them. But other than cleaning up ums and ahs and run-on sentences, we basically keep it in the same language that the person spoke in. Ideally, then the family, when they're reading the words off the page, they're hearing that person's voice in their head because it's in their mannerisms and it's got some of the words they like to use and that sort of thing. So I think that's a really special element of it.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, the tone, the voice is, makes it even more impactful, I would imagine. As you're going through this
Mhm.
process and you're, talking to people and you're starting to bring out things in them, at the end of that process, do people learn things about themselves? Like kind of what's different at the end of that process for people sometimes?
Yeah, I think the journey is part of it. And like I said, just being heard and listened to and cared for. Often they're making like pretty special relationships with our interviewers, even only over 4 to 6 hours. Some of them stay in touch and write to each other or visit each other when our writers travel. This is like off curriculum, but they've stayed in touch. Um, and then I think just due to a few questions we ask at the end, we like to always ask meaning of life type questions, advice questions, what do you want to pass on to the next generation? And so I think there's varying levels to how people like to get introspective on that, but yeah, there's some it's kind of just a good chance when they probably otherwise wouldn't be doing this at all just to think,
Hmm.
what's life been about? What do I want to share? So I think those are some special gifts we give kind of at the end. Yeah, and then there's the other details with like sometimes we're interviewing people who are on their deathbed, and so that's like the most introspective and delicate time. Other times we're interviewing people who have failing memories, and so we are not scientists in this department, but like there's evidence to show that revisiting old memories and using different parts of your brain can actually be supportive in kind of battling against that. So we might ask questions like to do with sights and sounds and smells and things to try to like draw up memories that might be challenging to draw up. So yeah, some really interesting stuff during the process, more than just the book at the end.
Yeah, you mentioned the process, Andrew. For folks out there that may be interested in this, um, what is that process like? What is that journey for somebody to go through this with you?
Hmm. So before we start, we do what's called our welcome call, and that's between our project coordinator and usually like a son or daughter or friend or relative of the actual storyteller. And we take a chance to ask, what are they most passionate about? What should we definitely ask them about? What'll light them up? What are some things maybe we shouldn't ask them about that might be challenging for them to go through? Because many of us have had things that were challenging through our lives that we might not want to immediately share with a relative kind of stranger on the phone. So sometimes we ask those things later in the process once they're more comfortable, or sometimes not at all. And then once we're into interviewing, yeah, we've seen all kinds of things. Like we've seen some people who are just delighted the entire way through. We've seen other ones where they need a bit more time and space between interviews because it's hard pulling up memories that were, really challenging experiences, even if they were 30 or 40 years ago. So that welcome call really guides us a lot in terms of where we should and shouldn't go, what pace we should go at, and all those sorts of things. And I'd say I don't really have a blanket answer other than that because everyone's pretty unique in the way that they reflect on their lives.
How long does that normally take? I mean, you talking, 2, 3 interviews? Does this take like months? Give people an understanding of kind of what that is.
So pretty common is about 4 interviews, and they're 1 hour each. We can do half an hour interviews. Sometimes people need that if they're, just struggling to get through 60 minutes of interviewing, depending where they're at health wise and age wise. But yeah, it depends. Some families like to really space them out. Some of them like to do them pretty quickly, but anywhere from 2 to 8 weeks for interviewing, and that's yeah, again, usually an hour at a time, and maybe we'll do 1 or 2 interviews a week. You want time in between to let things settle and to reflect and see if you maybe forgot something, but not so much time that you forget what you shared already. So there's a bit of a balance to it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because everybody, do you interview people and do these things for obviously elderly people? You talked about people that were maybe closer to the end than versus the beginning. You talk about people that may have some health issues, some memory issues. What's the standard kind of age? Are you looking for people that have been around a few years, or are you doing this with 20-year-olds?
Yeah, nobody in the kind of 20 or 30-year-old range. But yeah, we've done anything from 40 to 101. I think our average
101.
is, yeah, yeah,
Oh
we've
my
had our
gosh.
first centenarian or two. We did a book about a 2-year-old because during COVID, he'd never met his grandma. So the parents wanted to like tell all the stories about him and send a book to his grandma at least. So yeah, it's kind of like the Lego sets that say ages 2 to 99. We've kind of covered the whole the whole spread. But yeah, like 75 is pretty common. It's great if the person is still very healthy but has a lifetime's worth of memories. And if we're up against the clock for any reason, I mean that works too.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. Obviously, elderly folks have a lot of wisdom and a lot of, a lot of life, a lot of mileage on their brains and bodies that they've come across over the years, right? But that's really cool that you could document, even young children, for like a COVID situation. Yeah, because you're right. Things happen. You're at a distance, or even if
Hmm.
it's not a pandemic or somebody's sick or something like that. But what if you live in different parts of the world? As a
For
military
sure.
guy, we lived all over the world. My kids didn't get to see their grandparents, but maybe once or twice a year when we're
Yeah.
traveling back and forth. And so, yeah, there were some missed things there. Yeah, we took pictures and we had some videos, things like that. But boy, I didn't even think about doing something like that and handing that off to that'd be like the best Christmas present ever to give them like
Yeah.
a book of the kids.
A
That's a
story
really
of
cool
the year.
idea.
Yeah. Yeah. We've done corporate stories too. So companies that have been around a long time, or like, a CEO story of building the business. So it's kind of where we started the conversation today. It's like basically anything that is a story that can be captured
Yeah.
over the phone that we can record, like we can build a book around it. So it's fun trying some kind of different things as well.
Yeah, it reminds me again, I'm going to go back to the military again. When the military, um, because of the nature of it being government and open records and all these different things, there's a requirement that you document things that happen all year
Hmm.
long. And the military, I was in the Air Force. The Air Force had historians, They were usually, civilians. They weren't military members, but
Mhm.
they were civil service employees, and that was their job, was to work with all the different organizations, on the base and extract out, all of the gold nuggets. It could be, if you were changing the name of the organization, or there was a restructure, or, this, leader
Mhm.
was leaving and this leader came in, all the major kind of milestones. I remember when I was at Langley Air Force Base in the mid 2000s, we exited out the F-15 fighter jets and brought in the F-22s, and
Mhm.
that was the first base to ever get the new stealth jet fighter, the next generation fighter jets. It was the first base to get operational jets there, where we deploy them and use them in day to day operations. And that was huge. I mean, we had like members of Congress there, national leaders were there, big ceremony,
Mhm.
big unveiling event. It was a really big deal. And we had to capture all of those things, because that's part of the history of the military, the history of our heritage and all of that.
Mhm.
Um, Corporations don't do that as much, though. I've noticed a lot of companies don't do that. So I can see a lot of value. You can go into companies and kind
Mhm.
of document and preserve things, from this era to this era. Here's a book on all of these things that happened. And, a few more years go by and you come in every couple of years, you're coming in there and chronicling all the major milestones and the twists and the turns of that business. I imagine that would be very valuable to people.
Yeah, yeah, maybe like a little bit of a gap because there's like sensitivities amongst probably existing employees and stuff. So yeah, maybe it can't be that up to date, but yeah,
Yeah.
certainly looking back over like a 30 or 40-year business, I think yeah, it would make a lot of sense. So what format did that take for you in the military with those historians? Like, would they release or do like a 1 or 5 year kind of thing that you could then access? Or is it sort of just more like um, in the registries and government history? Like, did you get any kind of like a takeaway from your time there like that?
Yeah, so it's an annual requirement. You can put it on your calendar at the end of the year, and they'd usually send the leadership an email that has the forms and all the stuff. There's a certain kind of format they want it in. Anyway, they lay out all that stuff, and you
Hmm.
basically just kind of fill in the blanks. And they kind of guide you through the process. Hey, was there a change of leadership in the organization? Did anything significant happen? Did a building catch on fire? Did you lose anything? Miss anything? Like, did you fail an inspection? Like, did you bring in new weapons? Did you do
Mm,
this? Did you do that? And so they kind of prompt you through it to kind of trigger your brain on things to be thinking about, like, oh, I don't know, it's December. What have we done for the past 12 months? Most people are busy and they only, they'll write down a few things. And so they
yeah.
have a really good process to do that. And then once you submit it, the historian that's assigned to your organization will come over and go through it with you and ask a few more questions, fill in a few more gaps, gain clarity on things you wrote in there, and kind of really finalize it, polish it up.
Hmm.
And then they take it, and there's a system. I don't know the name of it, but there's an electronic system that they, upload all of that stuff into, that, the National Archives and all that stuff
Hmm.
can track, and it's all linked into all of those things. So it was really, really cool. But it gets you to preserve. I remember when I would take over, when I was the commander of an organization, one of the first things I would do as I was coming into the new organization is I'd request the records
Mm,
for the history of the organization, and they pack it up in a PDF document. It's like a 50-page document. And so, as the new leader of that whole organization, I can go through that on my way in. Before I
hmm.
get there, I can go through, oh, that's the logo of our organization. There's the history behind it. That's what that means, and the colors, and the,
Yeah.
when did the unit start, and just really go through all the major things that this organization's gone through. And there's some amazing reading in there, amazing history that
Yeah.
you can pick up on, and it just helped me be a lot more informed when I hit the ground and we started, meeting everybody and figuring out where we're at and where we're going and what next steps are. It was a really good foundational document to help me, as well as the other leaders, to have a good foundation based off of something you don't know anything about prior to that.
Yeah, such good context for you, and to your point, nothing like that would exist in the corporate world, I don't think. Like, for you to
Yeah.
get such a good kinda onboarding in so much detail before you showed up, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really helpful, and I think people can learn from that, right? I mean, I think there's value whether you're doing employee appraisals, whether you're
Mm,
rebranding or doing things in your company that's, invoking change or documenting things for performance purposes or whatever. I think it's
mhm,
healthy for whether you're a small business, a military, a government, or even a larger corporation. There's value in sitting down, as you were saying at the beginning of the show, you know,
mhm,
get in a quiet place and document these things, because when you root all that stuff out, what we in the business world or in life period really neglect to do a lot is celebrate success.
true.
We
Yeah,
are so busy. We are moving so fast. And most
yeah,
of us are focused on what needs to be improved, what didn't go well, how can we make that better next time, that we lose sight of the 25 million things that went really well this year and the good things that happened. So it's a really
yeah,
good way of documenting your successes. So
yes,
as a leader, when you kick off the new year, just like we're in the beginning of a new year this year in 2024, like you can celebrate those successes and talk about those with your employees
mhm,
and thank them for all that hard work. Most employees don't really, they're so focused in their niche. They're so focused in their office or their department, they don't
mhm,
fully understand everything that's going on, and people wonder why there's a lot of issues with retention, is because
mhm,
people aren't connected to the broader thing. Sometimes they don't understand the full impact they're making. And I think
mhm,
if leaders can use these kinds of things to document and celebrate and highlight those things for those employees, boy, I think of the difference that maybe can make for them.
totally. Yeah, you made me think of, like, of course, you're gonna look at what didn't go so well and try to fix it, but if you also aren't celebrating and then studying your wins too and thinking, "Oh, we did this. Oh, why did that happen? Why did that go well? Like, what how can we repeat the good processes?" I think we so often will, like, dig into the details of the failures, but we don't necessarily dig into the details of the successes, which is
Yeah,
really, like, the patterns you also wanna be studying. And then on a
yeah,
personal level, my friend runs a little journal company called Three Good Things, and it's a gratitude practice. But the next level they go to is like you talk about two or three things you're really grateful for that day or that week, but then you go and say, why did that happen? And how did I get there? So you're not just basking in the things you appreciate, but you're kind of asking like, how can I create more of these good things in life that I want to celebrate? So it's interesting
yeah.
to think that we, yeah, both personally and professionally, we maybe don't do enough of that studying of the successes and the wins.
And we don't. So how many times you go in an organization, or have you worked in a place and you ask somebody a question, or there's something going on, and they say the famous words, that's the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
And a lot of us want to make changes, right? We get promoted based off of change and doing something new and different. But sometimes change isn't necessary. Sometimes there's really good reasons for
Hmm.
not changing something. Sometimes there's really good reasons why the laws are the way they are, or the regulations are the way they are, or the rules, or whatever that may be. There's good reasons. Like there's lessons learned from the forefathers of that organization that led you to that point, and there's a reason for that. And I
Mhm.
think people having access to that and just not having somebody saying the easy, cheap way of explaining, oh, well, that's just the way we've done it. Get in line, salute, press
Yeah.
on, and deal with it. No, there's actual reason. And I think if people understand the rationale behind it so they don't go back and repeat those mistakes that were made before, I think there's power there, in my opinion. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Totally, yeah. I mean, I don't have kids, but even from like thinking about, explaining something to a child, if you just say, because that's what I said, you're not going to get the
Because I
same
said
compliance
so.
as if the person gets it, right? It's the same kind of the spirit as what you're saying about it in the workplace. If people believe in the reasoning behind what you're doing, they're way more likely to comply or even celebrate and spread the message of something than if you just say, because that's how we've always done it. Like you're working with smart people who need to understand and support the reason why they're going to do something, and people are never motivated to just do something without understanding the why behind it. So I think,
Yeah,
yeah, in personal and in work as well, if you can explain and bring them on side and help them co-create the reasoning, of course you're gonna do better.
absolutely. And so, Andrew, if people listen to this podcast and they're probably thinking to themselves, okay, I can relate to some of this. I own a business or I'm a leader of a business. I can see a lot of value in this. But even on an individual level, they're connecting the dots, on a personal level or business career. It doesn't really matter. They're like, this sounds really cool. I see, I see some benefit here. This, can really be helpful in many ways. How do they get started? They contact you and how do they know when they're ready to do that? Like, is there a certain thing people need to be thinking about first? Or how do you know when you're ready?
Yeah, good question. I think that's a really tricky one, and if I'm honest, I think that's something we're wrestling with. Where if you're trying to, sell something to someone for a specific part of their life. At a wedding, you're going to get a wedding gift. When someone has a baby, you're going to get them a baby gift. When do you write your life story? Like, when is the right age? Um, Famously, the diamond companies invented a market for engagement rings so they could sell more diamonds. I don't think we have that sway to like invent a time when you're supposed
Uh,
to tell your life story. If you catch it too early, then you're going to miss a bunch of the more travel you do in your 60s and 70s or something. And if you do it too late, I mean, that is the obvious nightmare scenario. Whereas if where you didn't take the chance when you had the chance, and then suddenly, your parent passes away and you have all these questions you wish you asked them. So I don't really have a good answer for you, and it's something I'm honestly working on as a business owner. Is like, how do we find a time, a circumstance, a holiday, a certain birthday, or something to have people prompted to think, hey, maybe this is the time now. But I would say if you have a parent that has great stories and they're healthy and happy to tell them, you can always go back and add more later. But if you miss the chance, the regret, I've seen both sides of the story, and it's really sad when people are a little bit too late. I've had the
yeah.
ones where they say, "Hey, my parent just went to hospice. Can we get that taken care of like right now?" And we rush and we capture the interviews just in time, and we write them a book. And I've also seen the ones that start a little bit too late and they don't get them done, and then it's just heartbreak. So if you've got the opportunity, I mean, I'm biased, but I say take it while you have the chance.
Well, our stories are written out. Our life stories are lived out day by day, year by year, and aren't just a collection of the days and the years that go by that make us who we are,
Mhm.
et cetera. Right. And so, to me, maybe a way to think about this is, you know, as you live your life, don't wait till the end, because how do you know when the end is? I mean, how many people know when their last day on earth is? Like,
Mhm.
I haven't met anybody well, I haven't met Jesus, but there's only one guy I know that knew when he was going to leave the earth, right? Like we don't know that. We can all have a heart attack today. We
Right.
can win the lottery tomorrow. Like anything can happen. at any
Yeah.
point in time, and we just don't know. Accidents happen all the time. And so
Mhm.
maybe the answer is, every couple of years, maybe every year you write a chapter. Like a book isn't written all at once in one sitting. A book is written in chapters, one after another, out over a period of time that
Mhm.
culminate and get bound together to tell the whole story. So
Yeah.
maybe we stop and tell parts of the story along the way and create those things in a chapter format so that you don't miss those things. So if something does happen and you do exit the earth, or you're in a business and somebody buys the business out, or things happen, things change, or evolve, you go out of business, like you've
Mhm.
captured those things up to that point, and then you just kind
Yeah.
of fill in the details to end the story, however that may end. But just something for folks to think about.
Yeah, totally. Not to mention, just if you were to do it across your life, even if it was every 5 years, you're just that much closer to it when you were writing it versus when you're 75, trying to think back to when you're 35. You're going to be
Yeah.
lacking some of the memories and emotion and closeness to the memories. So
Yeah.
definitely making it a habit could be a really good thing. And now it's like getting easier and easier. Like you can pull up your phone now and make a voice note and capture 5 minutes of stories anytime. So
That's
you don't
right.
need us to do the basics to get started. It's never been easier
Yeah.
to journal and capture stuff.
This is so awesome. I think what you're doing is powerful. I think we overlook it. It's one of those kind of things where, like, yeah, I'm just another everyday Joe in the world. And I'm putting my socks on like everybody else, and I'm out there working and doing what I do. And I think, take for granted that we are unique.
Hmm.
We all have a different makeup when it comes to our eyeballs and our fingerprints and our talents and skills and how our brain works and what our major contributions can be to the world. Boy, it would sure be nice to chronicle that. In the coaching business, I have a lot of conversations with people that are in different phases of their business or their personal life or career. And I ask them, I'm like, so, they get lost in their, I'll give you an example of somebody that got lost in their career recently, and they just lack clarity. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
this guy was a sales guy. He'd been doing sales for a long time, and he was pretty good at it. But he just got to a point. He was, in his 40s, and he's like, I just don't know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of getting bored with what I'm doing. I don't like this company anymore. I think they're going the wrong direction. I don't agree with the boss. And is it me or is it them? And like, what's going on? I'm just, I don't. Lacked purpose. They lacked the ability to know where they were in the forest. And when you ask them basic questions
Hmm.
like, so tell me, what is this ideal life you really want to live? Are you living it? Well, like, well, tell me about your goals.
Yeah.
And they'll talk around that, and you'll ask them a few basic questions and they don't have good answers.
Hmm. I think it's in like the closeness to once you've been in the same situation for a long time, you get so close to it that you almost can't see it. You can't observe it
Yeah,
from a third party. So keep
you
going though. I
can't.
interrupted a little bit.
No. And so people just get busy being busy, and they go down paths that other people want them to go down that may not even be right for them. And I'm like, okay, well, what are your unique things about you?
Hmm.
I went through this with a client of mine who's in real estate. He's in his 40s again. That's kind of if people get in their 40s, they kind of that midway point in their
Look
career, and they're
around a
kind of
little
like,
bit.
am I on
Yeah.
the right place? Am I doing everything I should be doing? And it's a good reflection time. 30s and 40s is a lot of reflection for people. And I took them through this process of, okay, well, who are you? Well, what do you mean by
Hmm.
that? Like, who are you?
And it's tricky to start. Like, and you're leaving a silence there exactly as you would, and when you have that big of a question, it's tough.
And then I asked him, I said, so do you even know what your best qualities are about you?
Mhm,
John Maxwell calls it the five swings. I've talked about this on the podcast, and referenced it a few times. So the five swings is a metaphor. You know, a tree and an axe, and you get 5 swings to chop down the tree, is a metaphor for what are the 5 things you're really truly the best at, that if you didn't do anything all day but just do those 5 things, you'd still move the needle and have career fulfillment, and you would be a happy person doing those things that you really truly are gifted. God gave you those gifts that other people don't have to the level you do. And people struggle with this. I haven't met a person yet. I ask them these simple questions and like, oh yeah, well, that's easy. And boom, 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 and they start. And so I think it's powerful that you can connect with people on this kind of level and help them through that journey in a different way than, similar but probably different way than
Mhm.
I'm working with people from a coaching perspective. So for the folks listening, I hope you get some really good tidbits here of some great nuggets that Andrew is laying out and we're articulating, because there's power there, there's freedom there, there's the ability to not just conform to the ways of life that we feel we have to conform to every day. You can make a decision, you can be different. And if you're in tune with what those things are and you leverage them, as Andrew is talking about in his storytelling, and how to, live your best life through these tools and resources Andrew's providing, what an impact that can make.
Well said. Yeah. Yeah, it really speaks to what you just said. It really speaks to self-awareness.
Yeah.
And you're talking about approaching it from a coaching perspective, which I appreciate as well. And sometimes it takes that friend or coach to help you pull those things out. I will say that I've done exercises that would give me the answers to those questions in those retreats I've talked about, and I probably wouldn't have the answer at my fingertips. So, it shows you how often we need to refresh and keep thinking about that stuff, or we'll lose it. And then I guess the self-awareness piece as it relates to us is and our business is like it's the ultimate self-awareness when you reflect on life, like maybe near the end of your life and
Yeah.
really think and take stock like what's it been about, what's been important, and how can I share it with the next generation? Kind of brings that same question on a really macro scale.
Yep. At the end of the day, when your life is come to an end, what do you truly want to be remembered for? The hardest worker in the office, the best dad ever, the best, mom, the best daughter, the best what? Like, what do you really truly want to be remembered for? And are you living that life? Are you telling that story? Are you demonstrating those things through
Mhm.
action and results that are making the most impact? And if you're not, I highly encourage you to connect with people like Andrew, who can bring these things out in you and help you ensure you get there and you tell that story and you are truly living the life you were meant to live.
Mhm. The word that came to mind for me was intentionality. And are you living intentionally?
I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And so, Andrew, thank you for such a powerful session today. It's easy to talk about the generic things of life and the daily, news snippets of life, and everybody's doing great in life and everybody's busy in life, but to be able to break things down and really get on a real level and get people thinking and challenging them and who they are and where they want to be, and the power of storytelling and what you're providing people, is amazing. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for impacting people's lives in a positive way, and thank you for being on the show. People want to learn more. They want to connect with you. They want to, tell their story and figure out how to do some of the things we talked about today. What's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Yeah. NoStoryLost.com is our website. And we're a pretty small company still. So if you use any of the email forms on there or email hello@nostorylost.com, you'll catch me. I still monitor those inboxes, even though we're starting to have a bit of a team. So you'll catch me there if you want to chat with me directly or just want to see the website.
Outstanding. Well, folks, that's it for today. Andrew was awesome. This was the first of a two-part series around storytelling. So next week, you do not want to miss out on the second part of the story of storytelling. and creating an unstoppable brand, an unstoppable you in the world that we live in today. So that's it for today. Hope you have a great week. Take care.